guys, how have you been doing? I've been like kind of inactive for like 2 weeks or less. I'm sorry for that. I actually had a flu for the past 2 weeks or so. I'm still kind of recovering. And my last video, I was like on my breaking point, and after that I just completely lost my voice and I couldn't even do any more videos if I wanted to. My friend Pesme had to like shut me down and tell me to go rest. Some of you are thinking like wedding cakes are just like a lot of work, and why would you like do that to yourself for a wedding day? But for some of us, we can't afford to be stress-free, and I want brides that want that big giant cake be able to make it herself at home. So I'm having a little tutorial here. The first thing we're gonna do is make some simple syrups. Simple syrups is just simply equal parts of water and sugar. You could do like 1 cup of water, 1 cup of sugar, 2 cups of water, 2 cups of sugar. It doesn't matter as long as it's in equal parts, and you add both of these ingredients into a pot and you heat it on high heat until the sugar dissolves. This simple syrup is used to moisten our cakes. I'm not gonna pay for cardboard. I had this giant box laying around and I just cut out 3 circles for them from each tier. And using the cake pan, I'm using to trace out the circles from the bottoms, and I'm just gonna cut them as perfectly as I can. I actually collect all these cardboard boxes knowing that I'm gonna use them for cake. So here I have a 6-inch, 8-inch, and 10-inch circle. We want to have our tools all ready, so what I do is I keep it in a half-sheet tray pan. One of my newest favorite tools is this Wilton cake leveler. It's used to cut your cakes evenly in half and to trim the tops also. It's pretty easy to use. You just use it in like a sawing like motion across your cake. Adjust the leveler to the desired length. I feel like when I use a bread knife, I don't get it perfect enough, unfortunately. With the leveler, I get like perfect slices of cake and it's just beautiful. I feel like I've never made it that nice before. And if you were to accidentally attack yourself with it, you won't get hurt because it's not like sharp or anything. It's not that I accidentally attacked myself or anything with it. I had this one cake that came out really ugly. I don't know why. Like the tops were kind of messy and the sides were like uneven. So after just trimming the tops and stuff and making it all nice and pretty with our leveler, we just take a knife and we just hold the cake from the side and removing any parchment paper or whatnot, and just running our knife along the edges until we get it nice and smooth. We're just taking a little bit at a time. If you take out too much at a time, you might overdo it. So just try to getting like little tiny crumbs at a time, working your way around the cake. We adjust our cake leveler and we're gonna cut our cake in half. When you're cutting and trimming your cake, make sure your cake is like not frozen. If it's frozen, it's gonna be really difficult to cut it. And you may have to like leave it out to thaw before you start cutting. One thing I didn't really like too much about this cake leveler is the grip on this leveler. It's kind of painful for me. It's like made out of really hard plastic. I wish they had like a softer kind of handle on this handle. And once we have all our layers trimmed and cut, we can move on to filling our cakes. I don't know about you guys, seeing these beautifully sliced cakes makes me kind of happy. After we trimmed and cut our cake, we're gonna fill our piping bag up with our frosting and using a little star tip. I think I used star tip 21. You could use 18. 18 or 21 is fine. If you put too much frosting, it's gonna be really difficult to pipe it out, and so many bad things could happen. We want it to fit comfortably in our hands. This is for a right-handed person. The right hand is to squeeze out the frosting. The left hand is used to guide the frosting. We don't use the left hand to actually squeeze anything out. If you do that, it's just like bad for your hand. Just taking a dab of frosting, we want to place it over our cardboard. So when we place our cake over it and we start decorating, nothing starts sliding around. And if you want, you could place some frosting onto the turntable, but I didn't seem to have that problem with it slipping around, so I didn't do it in this video. And for my turntable, I'm using a Lazy Susan. Lazy Susans are just little things that you get from Home Depot, and it's like $3-4, and it just spins things around when you place it on there. And the little flat thing that I'm using above there is actually a piece of stone, because you need something like a plate that's sort of heavy and flat, and all my plates kind of suck, so I got my piece of stone. But feel free to use an actual real turntable. Take the simple syrup we made earlier and brush it onto the cake to moisten the cake. What we'll be piping first onto our cake is like a little border around the circle. This is to keep the filling on the inside. And what we're using for our first, we're just gonna fill it with some jam, because jam is sort of just like the cheapest filling option for me, and it's sort of like my favorite filling option for cakes. You don't want to add too much, because if we add too much, it will just like overflow and get really messy. So don't get too greedy. I just add like 2 heaping actual spoons. And then we add on our next cake layer and try to make sure they're kind of even with the cake on the bottom. And then we just keep repeating the steps we did before. We add our simple syrup, and we add our border and more jelly. What I recommend doing for every cake is to have a crumb coat layer. This crumb coat layer is to keep all the crumbs out. It doesn't matter if you have like crumbs in the frosting when you're doing this. First, I just start off taking a little bit of frosting onto the tip of my spatula, and I'll dab it onto the side, and I kind of just like work it in onto the cake and just move it back and forth onto the cake. It doesn't matter if we get crumbs on this layer, because this is a crumb coat layer, and we're just gonna make a thin layer of frosting around the cake. Just have a bowl that you don't mind like getting dirty with crumbs. Do not directly add frosting from the main bowl to the cake, because there could be crumbs on your spatula or anything without you even really knowing it. I actually threw it into the freezer for like a couple minutes, and you don't have to worry about having to cover anything. You can just leave it in crumb coat in there, and the frosting should sort of seal in the moisture inside the cake. And also be sure to make use of your turntable. That's why it's there. So turn as you're frosting and smoothing out the layers, and add some frosting onto the top and smooth it, and make sure you keep your spatula like not crooked or anything. Try to keep it straight, because if your spatula is crooked, your cake is gonna be obviously crooked too. Other filling options I've used is also Nutella. A lot of people seem to be really excited that I use Nutella for this cake. So like yellow cake Nutella, yellow cakes. Try to use flavors that complement the cake that you're using. And for my final last layer, it's the smallest layer, so I use frosting for the layer. Around when I get to the smallest tier layer, I kind of get an idea how much frosting I have. I don't use the frosting on all the layers because I'm afraid I'm gonna run out of frosting. Just to be sure, I wait till the end to use frosting for filling. After we've frozen our cakes and we have like our crumb coat and everything, we want to make sure the area is like clean, like no crumbs on the table, no crumbs on the tool. And if you have crumbs now, it's gonna get onto our final layer of our cake. Start adding more frosting into our piping bag, and we're just gonna pipe frosting all over this cake, up and down the side. We'll be like touching the top of the cake and going down, up and down. And then we'll start piping frosting on from the top of the cake. We'll smooth out the sides of the cake, and be sure to clean off the spatula each time, just wiping it off onto our... Don't forget that you have a piece of stone, and be sure to use it and to turn it as you're smoothing out your cake. We actually don't need that much frosting since we'll be covering this cake with fondant, but if you're gonna skip the whole fondant, you could not take out too much frosting and smooth out the tops. This is a cake lifter, but I use it to smooth out the side. I felt like it was the perfect height for smoothing out cakes. And using your offset spatula, bring it from the edge to the center of the cake to smooth it out. Using my cake lifter, I'm just lifting it up very carefully and returning it to the fridge and working on my other tiers. Thank you for watching my video. Please like, comment, subscribe, and be sure to check out my previous video where I did a jewelry box review. Vlando was nice enough to send us a 10% off promotional code for Macaron jewelry cases. More details will be in the video, and I'll put the links down below. And bye!